G'day, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to the NOOBPEARO podcast. You are in exactly the right place if you want to improve your spearfishing. Just catch up on some stoke, listen into experienced voices from spearos from all over the world. You're in the right place. Today, Simon Trippe, a repeat guest. You can listen to him all the way back in our very first episode. Simon joined us. He's one of the most experienced and enthusiastic voices in spearfishing culture in Australia. It's really great to reconnect with him. We message every now and then, so it was really good to catch up with him on this episode and talk all about what happened with the Hawksbury Marine Park plans down south, and get some facts behind it, sort of his opinion about it, and really find out sort of what happened with it. Basically, they were planning to create all of these marine parks that would essentially shut down 50 to 80% of all of the sort of the prime spearfishing locations for learners, particularly in the New South Wales area. And Spearo's banded together and played a part in chucking that legislation out, which is really good and actually a really positive thing for recreational spearfishers. One of the main reasons for me is the fact that 25 kilos of seafood per person is eaten by one. Let me start that again. 25 kgs of seafood is eaten by every Australian every year, and 70% of this food is imported, and a lot of the stuff that's imported is from unregulated fisheries around the world. So just encouraging recreational fishing and getting young kids connected with their environment and catching their own food is a huge part of what we do in this sport. We're quite happy to go from preparing all our own equipment, shooting our own fish, gutting and filleting, preparing that fish and cooking it for yourself. There's a real pleasure in reconnecting with our natural environment. And so I think this is an issue that should be close to every spearo's heart. I mean, we're not against the idea of marine parks in general, but just where science backs. And so really good to get some more information from Simon about that today. Now, I'd also encourage you, if you're in the Sydney area, to join the Sans Souci Dolphins. Simon's been an active part of that club down there for a long time. And if you want to find out more about it, go to NOOBPEARO's homepage. Up on the right in the menu is the Club Connections page. And there's a whole list of spearfishing clubs in Australia, New Zealand, America. We haven't got any from the boys over in South Africa. So, look, if you go there and your club's not listed as well, I'd love it if you email me, Shrek@NOOBSpearo, with your club's details. You'll see what information I need there to put in that menu. But, yeah, anyway, Sans Souci Dolphins in Sydney if you want to connect with Simon. But the other thing we discussed today is just some general tips and info for getting started spearfishing in Sydney. And we just have a good yarn. So I really hope you enjoyed today's show. Before we get there, as usual, a couple of quick shout outs. I had Teague. I'm amazed by sometimes by the way of the quality of people that bloody listen to the NOOBPEARO podcast. I feel very honoured, I guess, to be able to connect and bring this show to a whole bunch of people, talented, clever people that listen to the show all over the world. So it's really cool. But Teague reached out about how to kill a fish. I'll just read it. It says the freshwater spearfishing in Vermont, where they've just legalised spearfishing. It says podcast has been super helpful, even though it's geared more towards saltwater. I'm curious about killing fish in the water. After really bungling it up with a freshwater drum, I'm putting away the spear until I can figure out how to kill them more humanely while out in the water. Any tips or links to an older podcast would be great. So I sent a couple of links for this, which is a great question. If you go to noobspearo.com/NOOBPEARO, I'll just go to the Caring for Your Catch NOOBPEARO podcast episode. It's a good one. Or if you can go into the blog, there's an Icky Jimmy, How to Stone Your Fish. Basically, killing that fish as soon as you can is not only humane, but it preserves a better eating quality of the fish as well. So I'd encourage you guys to go and check that out if you have any questions about that. Mick wrote in, hey fellas, just wanted to say thanks for the great info on the episode so far. Haven't been spearing seriously for long, but have seen some massive improvements since listening to your podcast. Got my first decent Tusky and Mackie this week, and I don't think I would have landed them if I hadn't put that actionable advice into practice. Love that. That's a great adjective, actionable. I don't know who came up with that, but I'm happy to rip it off and butcher it over and over and over again. Podcast review. Shrek and Turbo are hilarious to listen to and bring guests on who always provide great information and stories. That's from Jay Pedersen. Thanks, mate. Cheers, guys. Love the show. Just purchased the audio book. Also getting me excited for a 6-week Ningaloo trip for a month. Would love to hear a few more interviews from guys up around the Exmouth area. Keep up the good work. Froth on, Sam. So cheers for that, mate. That's a cracker interview. I have actually got someone lined up from your part of the world. It's just a matter of getting our times and everything right. So, and sorry about the relatively poor frequency of episodes coming out recently. But anyway, I've blethered on far more than enough. Let's hook into this yarn with Simon Trippe. Enjoy. Adreno Spearfishing are today's proud sponsor of the NOOBPEARO podcast. They stock a huge range of equipment that you can find in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and now Perth. That's right, spearfishing.com.au have got a huge range of gear. I encourage you to get along. Use the code NOOBSPEARO, NOOBSPEARO, and save yourself $20 on every purchase over $200 when you shop online. G'day NOOBPEARO community. Today I'm joined by the illustrious Simon Trippe. He was the first ever episode of the NOOBPEARO podcast. He's still actually one of the most popular episodes too. You've had way over 5,000 downloads, Simon. A hugely popular guest. So welcome back.
Thanks, Shrek. Mate, 5,000. Wow, that's a bestseller in novel standards. I'm impressed.
I don't normally talk stats and numbers on the show. I think we've had like 400,000 downloads of the show total or something. Not bad after 108 episodes. You're in the top sort of 10, I think, in terms of downloads. But anyway, a bit of a shine on for you. So, man, it was like 4 years ago we had you on the show. So catch us up a little bit about, what you've been up to. I know you got out the Coral Sea earlier this year, and you've been doing all sorts of things, running courses, and so just catch us up on sort of what you've been up to.
Yeah, cool. Well, Coral Sea, I've had 2 trips out there. I did one in 2016 and one late 2018, and you couldn't get 2 more different trips. The first one was just sensational. Great bunch of guys, as they always are, 20-odd blokes. And, mate, I think we got 60-something dogtooth in the boat. The average weight was 28 kilos. I keep these stats, by the way. I love them. And the biggest fish was 77 kilo, which was awesome. And a mate of mine, Evan Leeson, got that. And it was a stunning fish. And considering we had very ordinary conditions to the last 3 days of the trip, the fish were really good. They really came on. They were already there during the rough stuff, but when it flattened out, we had visibility over 60 metres, close to 70 metres on the last couple of days. It was just sublime. Yeah, the fish was on. And then the next trip, I went out, and as I was saying to you earlier, I chose a moon as close to the new moon as I could get the charter to go, and we went out to Frederick Reef and went out there. And I hadn't dived Frederick in some years. I think it was 11 years since I last went to Frederick, and I was expecting it to be sensational. And I had a really good team of guys, top blokes again, and just in a fire. The first day we got out to the pass where I wanted to go, it was sensational, and then it just withered away. Yeah, it's just how it goes, the luck. The guys fished really hard, tried really hard, but it was I think I've been out there probably 14 times now, trips out there, and it was definitely in the bottom rung of trips. But still an experience, to walk away from and you learn things. And, the blokes that were new to it out there, they still had a ball. They didn't know any better, basically. They thought it was awesome.
Yeah, right. So those guys have sort of, they've got a low bar, so the next time they go out, if it's a better trip, they'll have a ball, I'm sure. You said you'd take a great bunch of blokes out there. I'm taking it, you take a lot of Queenslanders and Kiwis out there.
Mate, I do have stipulations, mate, on that. So, mate, no Kiwis on this trip, unfortunately. But, no, mate, I had boys from WA, South Australia, had a Queenslander and a few Sydney lads. It was a good mixed bunch. It was great. And I had a crazy Greek as well. It was fantastic fun. And a Spaniard. And the Spaniard was great fun too. So, yeah, it was good.
So after 16 trips up there, clearly you've learned some lessons. And you tried to time it around this new moon. What's some of your advice for guys planning trips up there, and what charters do you like?
I think there's boys up there now to Queensland who specialise in spearfishing, and they advertise themselves quite well, and they do it well. I've just been using a guy out of Gladstone who I've used for years and years. In fact, my very first trip in the 90s, the decky on the boat then is the skipper of the boat I use now, Danny. So it's fantastic how that's gone along. So those boys know exactly what we want, what we require, and they've got their best interests, well, our best interests at heart, I should say, of trying to get us onto fish. They know what we're after.
Yeah.
And look, they also, there's house rules and everything that you abide by, and I think if you're going on a trip for the first time, you need to know yourself what you're getting in for. And just, I suppose Robert Ruark, the great game hunter, said it very well: use enough gun. Just don't go in there undergunned. Take your gun that you always use, that you use every day, that you're familiar with, your 1.1 or your 1.2. Definitely take that, because you'll have a ball on the reef and the shallow bombies and everything, getting reefies and that type of stuff. But you've got to have a decent gun to give yourself a chance for, the fish of a lifetime that comes along. So you spend a lot of money on the trip. And the same goes for all the overseas trips you can do as well. So you're spending all that money, you put in all the effort to work out the logistics. Take something that's going to shoot straight. You've used it, 50 times before you've gone out on the trip, so you don't miss when you get that shot, that opportunity. And just have something that's double inverted, roll it, or full rubbered, that's going to do the job and push the spear through the thick fish of a 80 kilo tuna. So
okay, cool, good stuff. I was just going to say, guys on a budget, like obviously you're working in teams when you're doing the Bluewater stuff, particularly. Like in terms of guys have different roles to play. Do you can two guys kind of share like a big Bluewater gun that because it's a lot of cost to potentially outlay. A lot of those things cost over $1,000 and so on. Huge
call, mate. One of the boys on the boat had an Alamani and a Blue Tech, and I think those guns were $4,500 each. Phenomenal money. Yeah. Sexy pieces of kit too. Like you just hold them and touch them, and you're sweating with desire. They're fantastic. They're awesome bits of kit. But mate, it's funny you say that. It's very true, and blokes do that. I had two Novocastrians on the boat, and they shared a big gun between them, and they did it well. It was the guy made a homemade inverted roller. That was like 1.6. It was ridiculous.
Holy shit.
The amount of work you put into it. But yeah, they shared that gun. They had a bit of luck with it.
Oh, good.
And they did it well. And the other gun that they used, I think, was just the big 1.4 Rob Allen. And they just worked out, we'll just rotate the roster with it. And they did it well. There was no issues there at all. It worked well. So, it can be done.
Okay, so like with Dogtooth, like you might find like two converging current lines or a big bit of upwelling coming over the front of a reef. I'm not sure really. I've never gone Dogtooth tuna hunting, so I'm just chucking it out there. But basically, you find the drift, you get in. Are you in a team of 2 or 3, or how does it work from there?
Look, it depends on the size of the dory and what the skipper has, or what the bloke who's organised the charter is organised. And the trips I'm on are they're four blokes to a dory normally, and one bloke driving all the time. So there's 3 in the water. We kind of got one guy with a big gun, definitely. Another guy, if he wants to, with the big gun or a smaller gun, and he's often on the flasher duty, so he might have a flasher that he's working.
Yep.
And then we've got another guy in the water with another flasher and burley.
Okay.
Quite often we're using burley as well. So and then even the decky doesn't stop, mate, with pilchards and things like that. Muleys, throwing them in the water, or fish frames as well. So the decky's working overtime. He's the hardest working one in the crew who's ever driving the boat. Yeah, that's sort of how we like to work it. Flashes at different heights. But you had Jaga on from Fiji on very early in the piece. I think he was one of your early ones, and he couldn't have said enough good stuff about doggy. So if people are interested in that, it's definitely worth following.
Yeah, cool.
His words of wisdom up. I agreed with him wholeheartedly back then.
Yeah, cool. Just for you, like just quickly, and I want to move on, but what about diver spacing? Do you sort of triangulate? And then how much distance do you have between divers and stuff?
Mate, the killing triangle. Yeah, I like a triangle.
Yeah.
It's funny you say triangle, yeah. So I always sort of say we've got to get that sort of triangle shape happening. That's how I think works best. That way, if a fish swims in and even surprises you and comes into that box, that gives opportunity for a couple of blokes to get on and do it, to get the shot. So the fish that swims into your zone won't swim out of it without a spear in it. So it normally works well that way. Look, you've got to work things out so there's no confusion, so you're not looking at each other, your turn. So that's all sorted. And once you sort of, I think if you're new to it, you'll work it out the first couple of days. A few swear words and obscenities shouted at each other in good fun. But you eventually get to read each other. One trip we had a big wahoo swim, and I was guiding on that trip. The last couple of trips I haven't guided. I've just organised the boat, and people come on as a cooperative type thing. But I was guiding a trip, so I had guys in the triangle, and a big wahoo just cruised up, and I'm just waiting I'm counting down the seconds for a spear to go into its shoulder. And then I've turned around going, what are you blokes doing? They're going, can we shoot that? I'm like, just unreal. Anyway, mate, West Australian boy and a New Zealander. What else would you expect?
Oh, no.
So, yeah.
My Kiwi bro let me down.
Yeah, mate, it was funny as. Big blue cobalt thing.
Normally we've got big buck fever. We're super excited. Like coming from New Zealand, like we do see big kingies and that, but pelagic sets my heart racing. Like, I've been spearing for a few years now, and man, I still I get excited like a big kid in a candy shop. I love seeing pelagics. I haven't seen dogtooth at all in the water, so hopefully later on this year if I'm lucky.
Oh, I hope you do see them, mate. They're alluring. That white dot appears, and just how they wriggle or how they drift in. They're just they soar with their pectoral fins out. They're just a fantastic fish. They're my favourite fish. They're just fantastic.
Hey, I wanted to get you in on this episode, particularly to chat about a couple of things that have kind of happened over the last few years. Obviously, we've had the big marine parks issue, particularly in your part of the world, and I wanted to get some information just for guys in that starting out, particularly in the Sydney area. But let's start with the marine park sort of issue. Can you sort of summarise what's happened, just for people that are sort of unfamiliar with the whole situation?
The Hawksbury bioregion. Mate, look, that was a shambles. If we are to believe our beloved politicians, the government in power, the Liberals, they didn't even know it was coming out until the day it was announced. So they were backpedaling from the start. And look, to be fair, the Fisheries Minister, when he was interviewed, was talking about seagrass. He was totally out of his depth on that first day or two of interviewing. He must have been going, quick, give me the profile. Everyone's ringing me. The phone's going off the hook. The media want me. I'm getting, Stan Kay from the Rec Fishing Association ripping my head off on messages. Show me. So some boffins just handed him seagrass paper. And it was ridiculous.
Just to be clear, there's not much seagrass in your part of the world. Is that what I'm picking up?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, yeah, it was very funny, mate. Apparently the Labor government endorsed this and advocated it. It would be 12 years ago now. I think it was 11 years ago last year. So the wheels were put in motion, and once they're in motion, they can't be stopped, from my understanding of this. So it has to go ahead. Yeah. So for the coalition to turn around and say, no, we're not having Marine Park, is a substantial thing for them to say and do, to block that, because there's been a lot of money invested in this. I went to the talks a couple of years before this actually came out, and I was horrified by the spatial. There was I think, and don't quote me on the number, but I think it was the fourth one that was the spatial area. And that was the one that was going to kill the spearos, because, as you know, we're limited with depth. So in Sydney, you don't need to dive more than 12 metres, 14 metres to shoot all your fish. 99% of the kingfish and dewies I've shot from Seal Rocks down to Shell Harbour basically are in the first 8 metres of water.
Right.
And it's all good and well for someone to say we only want 3% of the coastline, but that 3% impacts on us enormously. Because it's the prime area for the swimmers, for the scuba divers. And it accounts for 50%. And in the Central Coast region of New South Wales, where the northern part of the Hawksbury Marine Park, proposed marine park, I think the boys worked out it was close to 80% of their spearfishing spots, but don't quote me on the exact number, but it was extremely high. And you see, they take the prime ground shrek, like the spots for beginners, where the beginners learn and where the kids learn. They take those spots too. So where is our future? Where can we teach the next generation? Where can we educate them?
Just to play devil's advocate for a second, so, I mean, a lot of us have grown up walking through national parks and, if you've had a chance to go to Goat Island Marine Reserve in New Zealand, or maybe even Flinders or Henderson's Reef off Brisbane here, marine parks definitely are a really special sort of thing. That you've said they wanted to shut down 3%, but it was, maybe 50 to 80% of the prime sort of spearfishing or recreational fishing sites. But should there be some marine parks? Where do you draw a distinction here? When are they good and when are they not, kind of thing?
When there's true science that validates it, Shrek, is my answer to you. And I learnt there's a little place called Cabbage Tree Bay in Sydney, just at the back of Manly Beach there. And that was always a very fishy little spot and an awesome place in the lee of a southerly that you could sneak your boat in behind, or, kids could jump in with a hand spear and terrorise bathers. But that spot now is just resplendent. It doesn't get line fished or speared, and it's awesome. And people talk about how awesome it is. Well, I used to see all of those species there when we fished in a competition. So, but there's more of them there now, that's for sure. But do I see them on the next headland or around the corner? No, not really. So the spillover effect they talk about in mass, it's got to be huge areas. But we're also not a third world country. We're not ravaged by poachers. We've got very good fisheries management rules in place. And mate, our fishery is healthy. Do we need the marine park? I look at fish soup in the Solitary Islands. Just off is it Northwest Rock? It's just the one north of North Solitary Island. I know it as fish soup. And look, as a kid going there, it was spectacular. It was always a fantastic spot. Huge mangrove jacks, dewies, mackerel. It had the black cod in it, had everything with it. And this Hitler's Bommy is just, a 150, 200 metre swim away from it to get on the edges there. The gutter there is fantastic for Spanish. It's great. But you could go there on a day when you could fish it, and I was a young bloke then, and it would be barren and devoid of any fish life.
Yeah, right.
And then you go there another time and the fish are on. Now, I go there a lot when I go to Cox, because I take blokes there who are new to the club, and I say, jump in here, grab your camera, this is where you're going to film fish, and this is where you're going to learn about dewey behaviour, and this is going to understand about snapper. And they go, what? And they get in there, and some days they think I'm a raving idiot because we don't see any of that, but other days their eyes are boggling out of their head. I say, this spot is like this. I said, it can be awesome one day, terrible the next 10. I said, just happen upon it on a good day. So although it's a sanctuary, doesn't mean it's always got great fish on it. But where do those fish go? So they've got to be around somewhere.
Yeah.
But mate, look, I like marine parks. I don't mind marine parks, but just validate them and tell us why. You're going to do it for access, for a swimmer to be in, so spearfishermen or fish hooks aren't going to get in their feet, or to allow more scuba diving access. That's not good enough for me when there's pollution That is the biggest issue to me.
Yeah.
That kills more fish than anything that we do.
Particularly in your part of the world, the fishery seems to be quite well managed. I mean, there's very few vulnerable species, I think, that are affected by spearfishing or even recreational fishing in a wider sense.
Oh, mate, the Jewies, the mulloway are in big trouble.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that right now.
In general, it seems to be quite well managed, but for the species that are vulnerable or whatever, like this is where management practices can help to correct that imbalance rather than just a blanket lockout, which can actually further impair, I think, some of the sort of the unique balance that you've got in some of those places. So, yeah. But go on, Mulloway.
True. Oh, mate, I was just going to say that sometimes the New South Wales fisheries, if I'm going to critique them, is that they take too long to make a decision at times.
Yeah.
And the jewfish is a classic example of that. In 2003, we were given permission to go and count grey nurse shark, and they were going to take it seriously for us. This is when they were saying there were fewer than 300. I took a boatload of guys out. We went to Crowdy Head. We counted 253. We each worked a grid. We said, this is the grid you work, you work, you work. Come back in a couple of hours. And one of the boys filmed 80 in a gutter, right? So we counted 253 when they were saying there were fewer than 300 on the east coast of Australia.
Yeah, right.
Go and work that out, right? And I sold it to the boys. I didn't tell them we were counting grey nurse shark, mind you. I said we're going up to shoot jewies, right? And I said, while we're here, we're going to count grey nurse on this reef because I'd heard there's a few there. All right, no worries. You know how many jewies we speared that weekend? I think we got about 4, and we were there for 2 days, and we only counted grey nurse for a couple of hours.
Jeepers.
So, and as we said in our stat decks, worry about the jewies, not the grey nurse. And mate, they're just, they need looking after. So I endorse any proper science or research on those and bag limits, etc. on those fish. They need it.
Yeah, I'm all for a more responsive fisheries management process as well. Like some faster turnaround, particularly with vulnerable species, would be great. Like in Queensland here, we've recently seen a whole raft of changes that are coming out. They've closed the snapper fishery for a couple of months of the year, which is really good to see. But the wheels of bureaucracy seem to turn very slowly. I think the marine scientists and the people that are doing the legitimate work on the floor must be frustrated as well that some of the changes can't come about quicker in terms of, managing species bag limits and size limits and so on. With jewfish, why are they so vulnerable? Obviously, they go to the same places, they congregate in the same areas. Is that part of the why they're so vulnerable?
I can't really tell you. Just the catch rates are down on them. There's a huge issue, and I'm not going to bag commercial fishermen at all here because I fully believe everyone's got a right to fish and earn money from catching fish for their family. There's not a problem with that because that's well controlled as well. But there was a big issue in regards to some commercial fishermen wanting a smaller size for the jewfish, but you've got to have a size where they can at least throw one round of eggs, right?
Oh, exactly, 100%.
Is how I think. And that's not quite happening. They've changed the nets and everything, so more will come out. But you still see small jewies sold in the markets, and that's just the bycatch that's left. So they're allowed to sell so many on bycatch. Mate, it's just a fishery that needs to be better researched. And rather than twiddle thumbs, something should have come in years ago and just said, and it has now, but I hope it's not too little too late. I'm sure everything marine that I've seen that's had restrictions put on them, like the crayfish, they're in abundance. The cray season in Sydney gets better every year. They just keep coming back more and more with their awesome fisheries management. The only thing they're doing there is not letting us have more of them recreationally. They keep allowing the TAC for the pros to go up, but they're not giving the recreationals more.
New Zealand's recently saw a whole lot of changes with regards to the management of their sort of power and crayfish fisheries as well, and for good reason, particularly in some zones around New Zealand. And I guess when a species is better understood and their movements, their migrations, their breeding cycle are understood, that's when they can be kind of managed properly. Some species seem to be managed quite well and some quite poorly. With the blue groper fishery down there, we joke around blue groper up here are not protected in Queensland. You go south of the border and they're in almost like plague proportions. That seems to be where, because they are completely protected from spearfishing down there. That seems to be kind of erroneous. Like, it'd almost be beneficial to let spearos take, say, one each or something, for a little while. What do you think of that?
You're trying to get me into trouble on this podcast today. Huh? I'm already in trouble over my view on Deweys, I'm sure.
I like to shoot there.
Look, mate. It was the association, the Spearos, the USFA back in the day, like with the grey nurse shark, warned the government about the blue groper because we're rolling them over. And the spear guns built at the time, all those shoulder guns, like the carbines, are you familiar with what I'm talking about? So they're like a rifle.
Yep.
And they'd have big, shark barb on the end of it to push off sharks and all that type of thing. And, big guns. They built them to shoot gropers with.
Right.
The blue groper. And they worked that out. You can never eradicate a blue groper, though, in my opinion, because they're a deep fish and we can't dive down to get them. But we started to knock them around a little bit. And there was no bag limits either with them recreational for fishermen. And if you go down the rocks and you see an old bloke there with a big rod and an alvey and a red crab, you can guarantee he's going to get his bag limit.
Yeah.
And then he's down there the next day and he'll get his bag limit again of 2 good blues. They will do it. There's no doubt. They're a sucker for a red crab. And an old bloke can wait all day. They can go and hold itself up for half an hour. He doesn't care. He's going nowhere. He's on the pension. I'm having a ball. He's doing what he's dreamed about for 30 years. Go fishing every day. So, and that can be done, right? But then there's the ethical side of it, and most of us now are all responsible and ethical, so we know that. And yes, groper are in plague proportions. Some days where I take my students, diving the practical on day 2 at Long Bay at Malabar, 80% of the fish you see in the morning are just a groper, juvenile to big. They're everywhere. And you've got to wonder the impact that has on other fish because they're quite an aggressive fish.
Yeah, so, I was just going to say anecdotally, like I hear they spook, other species off and they'll patrol an area of reef and they, you won't see some species because they're there in plague proportions. We joke around and call them the seeing eye dogs of the reef. Have you got some sort of similar language down there?
No, mate, they're just pests.
Yeah.
We haven't really got a name from down here, but there's myself and a few other blokes, we have a joke about it and half serious, that we think if you read all the old fishing papers that used to come out weekly in Sydney, they used to catch a lot of snapper off the rocks in Sydney back in the day, and they don't do that now. And whether they've lost that technique and that knowledge of how to catch them, but we think it's the groper that has spooked all the snapper out of the shallow waters off the rocks. They're just not caught as much. And the snapper are definitely there. They're there. They're still there, but not in the shallows. So it's interesting that I really think they're aggressive fish.
Yeah, I think it's an example of a strong fishery that could possibly be opened up. It doesn't have to. You don't have to throw the gates wide open, but perhaps they have a one blue groper per boat for spearos or something like that. Where
mate,
you can.
Mate, if they want more money, if they went around and sold a tag for $50 to shoot a big blue, I'd buy a tag for $50 and roll a blue, and I've got my tag and I can tag the fish with it. I'd do that.
I've lived up here and I've rolled a couple, so I wouldn't pay $50. But I see,
mate. Yeah, but
I see your point.
But in Queensland, they move much quicker than what they do in Sydney, for example.
Oh, yeah.
The blues at Moreton swim pretty quickly.
Yeah. Generally,
they hang around. Yeah,
I was going to say conversely, I've chucked out one fish that I think could be opened up to the fishery a little bit. I think up here, and this is just purely so that people send me some hate mail, but we've got the black spot tuskfish. I think you talked about jewfish before being allowed to at least go through one full breeding cycle and chuck out eggs. I think the black spot tuskfish should be suitably managed like that up here as well. I think maybe we need to raise the minimum size limit. That's probably not going to be a popular view, but that's one that I would put forward voluntarily because...
Anything, so long as there's science behind it, Shrek. It's not anecdotal because a green will laugh at you if you use anecdotal. They're quite happy to use it emotionally to blackmail people who are ignorant in regards fish and spearfishing and fishing.
Yeah.
They'll do it. But then in a closed room with officials, fisheries and government, the Green will use that emotional anecdotal stuff and bias science. And I'll be quite truthful with you here. That goes on. Yeah. That happened at Cabbage Tree Bay.
Yeah.
But when we use anecdotal as a fisherman, they laugh at us.
Yeah.
But you had, I think he was a doctor, Richard Pillins. He was on a while ago. I remember hearing him.
CSIRO,
He talked about the black spots and just you only get the big ones in the deeper water now.
Yeah, he's influenced me heavily with those views. Yep.
Yeah, mate, I'd go along with that. Mate, it's just the same as, some spots you go to are plagued with parrotfish up your way. And then when the Spearos get onto it, they're not as plagued. They move on. They don't like the attention. Similar to the grey nurse shark down here in Sydney, mate. Once the scuba divers find them, start taking photos of them, they disappear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yes, people are harassing you every day of the week on your front door, you go.
Yeah, you're right. Is your major issue spearfishing all about equalizing? I got good news for you. We've been pumping Ted Harty's immersion freediving equalizing classes for a while now for free on the NOOBPEARO podcast because we love it that much. It's effective. Now, his roadmap to Frenzal class is absolutely excellent. It's a full-on video course that will help you to master the technique of Frenzal because you're probably doing Valsalva. Now, Ted sweetened it up a little bit more. He's got a 15% discount code. Go to noobspearo.com/TED, get full access to the roadmap to Frenzal equalizing class, and if you don't learn how to Frenzal within 30 days, he'll give you a full money back refund. Now, everyone wants to get beyond that 15 to 40 foot mark, that 5 to 10 meter mark, and you don't want to be going upright to have to equalize. You need to learn the Frenzal equalizing technique, and the best way to do that is spend a little bit of time doing Ted Harty's course. Come to noobspearo.com/TED, get a 15% discount. Enjoy. Guys, head over to vimeo.com. Check out the How to Spearfish video series by Luke Potts. There's nearly 4 hours of video training there, and they're divided into 5 different videos so far to help you take on the areas of difficulty that you might have. Now, there's a beginner's guide to spearfishing gear. There's a guide to how to increase your breath hold for spearfishing. There's techniques for spearfishing yellowtail kingfish, which also doubles as a guide to hunting pelagic fish. There's a guide techniques for spearfishing snapper, which is a really good, helpful guide for approaching canny reef fish, which is a tough one. And finally, a guide to spearfishing around sharks. If you want to buy any of these videos, use the code noobspearo and save a bit of cash. Check it out. Vimeo on demand, how to spearfish. I read a paper by some Italian scientists who, obviously they're fishing the Med, which is overfished already, and they did an experiment to talk about basically to identify where the fish slowly adapted to being predated upon by spearfishermen, and they did. They ran consecutive experiments over, different groups of fish, local populations of fish, to see what happened over prolonged exposure to spearfishermen and spearfisher women, and the fish became smarter and smarter. So, I mean, nature has a means to protect itself as well, and it's like, sometimes we have to be wary of what our actions are doing, and it's great to have the knowledge and the science to back it up. But it'd be great to play more of a part in managing the fishery and being sort of, more responsible in terms of playing a part in that response, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And I like the Italian research. And I can think of off the Mousey, the pinnacles there that's off North Solitary, up that way again at the Solitaries there, the Big Island. There's 2 pinnacles there. We used to shoot wahoo off there back in the day. They still do. But there was a big gold spot pigfish there. He's a massive boy, and he had barnacles on him. He's that big and that old.
Holy moly.
And I reckon I would see him twice a year for years and years. And do you think, mate, state record fish.
Yeah.
And I love a record. If I think I can get one, I'll shoot it.
Yeah.
Do you think I could get anywhere near him?
Yeah.
No way. And I saw him for years. Because there's also science out there that say fish don't have a memory and they'll forget. But I laughed at that because I think a fish like that, a solid, and it's the same fish because he's identical how he looks and his marking.
Yeah. They talk about programmed like behavioural response. But yeah, there's definitely something to cunning. I mean, you see it in shark behaviour. You know, the young or juvenile ones seem to be much dumber and more aggressive sometimes with spearfishermen, whereas the older ones and the larger ones are often less aggressive and less kind of in your face because they've gotten big because they've been wary of the right things, I think. And you know, fish adapt to their environment.
Those big sharks, mate, they're as smart as dogs, smarter than dogs. They're, the big tigers and whites and everything. I think they're very, very clever animal. Yeah, definitely, I agree.
Just sort of closing out a marine parks chat, unless you had some more stuff to chat about, I was going to ask you, have you seen the Drawing the Line documentary? It was made a few years ago now. I only watched it a few days ago, but it was all about the marine parks issue. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
Bloody good watch. So it's on YouTube for free. Drawing the Line, it's called. But I think that was done by recreational fishermen a number of years ago, and it's funny. It covered a lot of the issues that came up during the Hawksbury saga. So yeah. Moving on. Unless you had some more marine park stuff.
Oh, mate, no. All I'm going to say is that we used our feet. We marched. We had thousands there. I think there were over 5,000. The media reckon that were there. Some said 8,000. We had, and it was Spearos that led the way with the protests as well, and awesome. I'm very proud of that. Simon Horvath, Alex Hamo, Paul Marsh, just to name a few of those boys in the Central Coast Sea Lions Club. So it's a spearfishing club. The USFA led the way with that. They got very politically motivated. They lobbied very hard, and Simon Horvath has revealed some amazing errors of this government. And what goes on behind the scenes, it's disgusting. And there's still more to be revealed. So, mate, Spearos, hold your heads high. I think the government have worked out that we're only small in number, but we're very, very passionate about what we do and we'll fight for our right. And that's why, mate, the USFA was formed in 1948, because they were going to lock us out then in 48. The young blokes today, they wouldn't even know what spearfishing is in this country, apart from the association and the spearfishing clubs. It's that it's that simple. And I'll happy to have a beer with anyone and argue with them over that. It wouldn't be here today unless for the associations.
No, it's awesome. I mean, there are some countries where spearfishing has been completely banned. So definitely big ups to the club. USFA, AUF, it's great to be part of a club and be part of that proactive sort of political response. We need these groups taking actions on our behalfs, and I'm friends with Simon on Simon Horvath on Facebook. He's definitely very vocal and very active, and hats off to the work that he put in for free. There's a few of those guys, so awesome stuff. Hey, let's move on to Sydney. So I've never really covered with anyone in a podcast how to get into spearfishing in Sydney. I think we talked a lot about going straight into clubs, and obviously that's a really effective route to get around a bunch of experienced guys, have access to mentors, secondhand equipment, learning, the conditions, and I think it's definitely the fastest way. But in terms of like species to target, places to first sort of head out, I'd love to get into some of your expertise with regards to that.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to talk about that. Look, I'll be biased here in a way. Like, we don't have coral trout on our doorstep, but we shoot them now. They come down here. But, mate, I don't know many places in the world where you can, in the main harbour and the heads, you can catch great fish, kingfish, in your headlands. It's a superb place for a diver. You don't have to dive deep, as I mentioned earlier. And I suppose, mate, we have pretty good weather. Where will I start with this, Shrek? You got me a good one. If you're new, head into Adreno Spearfishing. All right. Get a plug in there. The boys, mate, I tell you, the boys there are fantastic. Craig Sea Dog's there now. Sammy's moved back up to Brisbane. And Craig and the boys there are doing a great job. I go in there a lot. I take my young bloke in there. He's 6 now. And we go in there and have a look at the guns and wetsuits and everything. And the boys there are awesome. And there are so many new guys that are in and out of that shop. They get great advice, and they get a whole heap of kit, and away they go. So species to target in Sydney, obviously we've got the humble red moe. That's always a first on on every beginner's list, I suppose.
I shot my. I just a quick confession, Simon. I shot my first red mowie about 7 or 8 months ago down the Tweed Heads. I've never bothered to shoot one before. I shot it and I cooked it that night. It was absolutely fantastic eating, way better than a normal mowie. Is that your experience?
Mate, red mowies are good. They're a good fish to eat. They're great, and they're a good starter fish. They don't move around much. I think my advice with Sydney is don't chase fish. So, and that is when you see fish, don't swim after it. If you see a fish, dive down. If it's not moving, you can shoot it. But otherwise, just wait it out. And really, 10 seconds on the bottom, and a red mower will stop, perch, turn sideways, look at you, and you can put a spear into it. And mate, yeah, it's a beginner fish, and then and you move on from there.
Yeah.
You know, we've got luderick that are good eating. We've got rock blackfish, pigs, as we call them here, black drummer. They're great eating fish. Obviously, we've got bream. They're good. We get a lot of bonito for 6 to 8, 9 months of the year.
Okay.
Fairly regular.
Goatfish.
And look, goaties. Yeah, we get goaties. They're pretty much all around, year round.
Yep.
Where I mentioned crayfish, we're having phenomenal crayfish again season. The crays have all just walked back in.
Yeah, right.
They were thick the last month, but just this last weekend, so 2-3 days ago, they've all walked in from that last big storm, and they're on every headland. Everyone's catching them, and they're abundant, and that's great fisheries management right there. And kingfish, mate, there's kingies practically around 12 months of the year, and you're just always seeing someone snotting a good kingie. It's up on Facebook. Someone's got their first king and they're stoked, and it's a good fish. So it's great. And starting, mate, more or less Sydney, I call from Palm Beach up there at Barrenjoey Head, and all the way down to Cronulla, basically. They're all national parks, its own entity, but it's better if you have a boat there to cover that immense amount of coastline.
Yeah.
But, from Barrenjoey's good. A rock hop at South Palm Beach is fantastic. I'm a big fan of Avalon. These are all Northern Beaches spots, Shrek.
Yep. So these are headlands?
They've all headlands. Well, look, mate, back in the day, I think I've speared a dewey on every headland in Sydney.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so, they've all, see, we're lucky here. So most of the headlands have reef. So straight away, there's rocks, boulders, and weed, and that will go for several metres. And then it will change just to nice, lovely big boulders with some weed from, say, just don't criticise me here, but say from 8 metres to 14 metres. And then you'll get a drop-off, and then you'll start getting sand lines, sand gutters, big rocks, caves, boulders, all the way down to 23, 24 metres before it sort of gets onto sand. Some places that stops at 18 metres before it gets onto sand. But normally it's good reefy structure, just about on every headland in Sydney. And, someone will point something out and say, this one you're bullfed. And I go, yeah, that's right. Okay, that's sandy. But, mate, we're blessed. And you can get in the water safely in quite a lot of locations. So, like, South Palm's a wonderful little spot for a beginner if you're on the northern beaches. And you get down there in the corner of Harbour's a good little spot too. Ferry Bower's good in a southerly to get out of the way.
Before we fired up the interview, you showed me a big marine taxidermied morwong on your wall. Where did you shoot that?
Sound like Paul Rosso, mate. He called it a mowie too. Mate, that was good. That was a snapper. And that was 8 kilos, so that was worth putting on the wall, that one.
It's a beautiful fish.
It's a good fish. So I got that at Longreef on a spot called The Wall. So Longreef is the home of spearfishing in Sydney, if not Australia, because that's where the association started in 48 at Longreef at Collaroy there.
Yeah, right.
There's a shallow bommy that comes up to 3 or 4 metres, about, from Collaroy Beach itself, it'd be 800 metres. But actually off the headland is probably only 300 metres to the north of the point. And they call it The Wall, and the scuba divers know it. It's got some grey nurse on it. Once again, it's hit and miss. When it's on, it is sensational, and you can go there other days and there's not much there. But it's a really good place to dive. You've just got to be aware it is one spot in Sydney that will have a bit of tide or movement, a bit of current.
Yep.
especially around a moon change. So just be aware of that. But it's a gun spot. So I got it there. It was actually, we had a competition in Sydney Harbour with the venue where we meet, and they called the comp off. And it was a big swell day. But as I said to the boys, I said, it's 70, 80 foot of visibility out there, boys. I said, I'm still going out spearfishing. So it was a big rough day, and so it was breaking on the wall that day. And when I got in the water that day, there was rainbow runner everywhere, kingies, and there was literally, dozens of snapper scooting around on the bottom. And I've just gone, my goodness, look at this. And a mate of mine had just shot a brim or something like that. I said, what are you doing shooting that for? Look what's underneath us. There was snapper everywhere. And he said, what will I do with this? I said, chop it up and use it for burley now. Bring the snapper in. So he did. And then the snapper bolted because he dived down on them as soon as he chopped it up, because I said, I'll let him dive on it. And I said, that's okay. Don't panic. There's plenty of them. They'll come back. Well, I find that if a snapper doesn't bolt and swim away, it will come back.
Yep.
If it's suddenly just casually moved away. So you can burley urchins. And this is where I'll shoot a yellowtail or a pike, like just a bit of bait that's going to get eaten in the next 2 weeks anyway.
Yep.
And chop that up, because I'm not really a burley user, but I will use a bit of burley on a snapper if I see one. And anyway, a big snapper came in, and my mate, I won't mention his name because he's threatening he'll kill me if I ever reveal who it is. And he died. And I said, your fish, you get it. And so, because there was still a bit of burley drifting around, and he dived down on this fish, and I thought, oh, this is perfect. I'm watching this. And he shot, and he missed. And as he was diving, I'm saying, why hasn't he got both rubbers loaded on his gun? Because I'm seeing one rubber flopping around.
Oh, no.
And I'm thinking, geez, if ever you're going to have 2 rubbers on, you'd use this to, for that extra grunt. Anyway, stuffed it up. 5 minutes later, another big red came in. It came in on my flasher. And I said, get this one, Dan. And he dived on it. He went down. I've just mentioned his name, then he'll kill me. And he's dived himself in. And he's dived down on it, and it spooked. And by then I've gone, oh, crikey, I'll swim over here. And I just I dived, might have been 10, 12 metres. I laid down on this rock and just waited. And he spooked the fish when he approached it. And it swam underneath the boulder. So I've just drifted off the rock and just shot. I had a 2 rubber gun with a pranger on the end, a 6 barb cluster head.
Yeah, righto.
And just smacked it on the top of the head and rolled it good night.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
When I came up, he was going, oh, mate, that's awesome. I said, yeah, thanks. And he had a big knife in his hand, and I thought he was going to kill me. And I said, he just wanted to bleed the fish. I said, no, it's all right, I'll deal with it. We get in the boat, and I got in the boat, and the fish is awesome. And there was a guy who was boating for us that had never fished a comp before. But I said, come out boating and learn. And so he was goggling at the fish. And I said to Dan, while I'm, look, we're admiring the fish, I said, mate, before with the snapper, why didn't you load both rubbers on the gun? He goes, what do you mean? I said, you got a 2 rubber gun. Why didn't you load both rubbers? He goes, I don't have a 2 rubber gun. And I've gone, you're kidding. So he had a shot at like a fish as big as the one I got that was 8 kilos with an unloaded gun. And he's just squeezed the trigger and the spear's fallen out.
Oh, no.
Mate, I still laugh about it. So,
shout out to Dan.
That's butt fever, mate, isn't it? So fired up. It's just a sensational day. And then Mike Benici, who you may know, he's a gun line fisherman now, big sea devil boat advocate. He got a dewey further up the reef, about 15, 16 kilos. So I've got a lovely memory of Mike and I holding fish at the end of the day at the boat ramp. It's a nice memory. So, good day.
That's a cracker snapper anywhere you go. Jeepers, I really want to get over to New Zealand and shoot a big one myself at some stage. But it's one.
Yeah, I got one 10.5 over there, just shy of 11 in New Zealand when I was there.
Yeah, right.
It's good fish.
That's a bloody good fish. How come you didn't get that one mounted as well? You'd have two of them on your wall then.
Mate, well, I was there at the Nationals at Tairua years ago, and I fell into pairs there. I fell in love with pairs diving, and I shot it on a day before the comp, and with just a scout day. Oh, that was fine. And I remember I dived on a fish earlier, and I thought it was a dewey I was diving on. I'm going, geez, I'm going to be the first bloke in New Zealand to spear a mulloway. And I've gone, hang on, that's not a mulloway, that's a big snapper. And it swam away. And then I swam up to my pairs partner, Froggo, Lenny Goldsmith, and he was with Shane Fitzmaurice, who's a three-time New Zealand champion, with
Pat's
Shane
mates.
and Pat.
Pat Swanson.
Yeah, Pat Swanson. Yeah. Lovely guy. And Woolie's become a lifelong mate of mine since I met him at that comp.
Yeah, righto.
And I told them about what I'd just done. I said, I've just spooked this big Dewey, but it was a snapper, and I just totally stuffed it. It would have been 30 pound. It was massive. Because I used to shoot a few Deweys back then, so I knew the size. And Shane went, mate, go back there and ground bait, and it may come back. And I said, all right. So I've left them to it. I was watching Shane dive then. Blew my mind. I swam away from that going, we're not going to beat this guy. He was phenomenal, what he was doing filming. So as I just snooped then on the way back to the spot to set up an urchin sort of bait. And I came over this rock and looked over the shadow, and a couple of rays had moved. And I just saw this sort of out of the corner of my eye, this flick. And so I've moved across, back over and down. And there's a big red there. And he's just, mate, praying a double rubber again, just smack, lights out, was great. And he was huge. So I think he was 24 and a half pound or something. He was a big fish. So I was happy with that. And the Kiwis, mate, I put it on the barbie and we all ate it. So it was fantastic. So everyone in the caravan park, we all got a feed out of it. It was great.
Hey Noobers, it's Jeremy here from Spearing Magazine with an update for you guys. Shrek and Turbo have been doing such a great job with telling guys about Spearing Magazine that we've actually sold out of most of our back issues and catalogs. But I just wanted to let you guys know that we have an international subscription available just for you guys. Yeah, from Spearing Magazine. I'm Jeremy Campbell. Thank you, guys. Go to spearingmagazine.com. Check out the international subscription. Aw, yeah.
Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon. It's a membership platform that makes it easy for artists and creators like the NOOBPEARO to get paid. Basically, you support us per episode at any level that you choose. Head over to patreon.com/noobspearo. Today's episode powered by patron listeners just like you. One thing I love chatting up with you about, Simon, is your enthusiasm, your passion for spearing still comes through loud and strong even after all these years. So it's bloody awesome hearing your fish stories, mate.
I love it, mate.
Hey, I wanted to let listeners engage and find out maybe about some of the courses you run down there in Sydney. Can you fill us in on some details about how guys can find out a bit more about that?
Yeah. So I go through a shop called Frogdive. They're a scuba shop, but they sell spearfishing gear. They're also doing freediving courses there now too. They've got a good instructor there, James. And Andrew Harvey and myself do the spearfishing courses out of there. We do them at least once a month. It's on their website there, the Frogdive website.
Oh, perfect.
Under courses, you'll see spearfishing. Yeah, so we're easy to find. Or I'm on Facebook. I do a lot of one-on-one courses now, I was mentioning to you. So just people that want to tweak something or just get something right, they think they're lacking. I do a lot of father and son courses, especially during the summer. Geez, I was flooded with those the last couple of seasons. It's been great. So they're great. I really enjoy those too, seeing the dads and the young blokes getting into it and just going through just some basics and some safety and just using a gun properly and things like that, yeah. As well as just that key word I love, relax, just trying to teach people how to relax a little bit better in the water.
Well, there's an absolute bloody ton to learn when you start spearing, and you don't even realise how much you've learned, after a few years of doing it. You turn around and someone asks you some questions and you start explaining stuff and you realise, holy shit, there really is a lot to doing what we do, So if guys want to find out a bit more about that, they can go to today's show notes at noobspearo.com/Trippe2, TRIPPE2, and I'll have your Facebook linked up and I'll have the Frogdive courses linked up. Guys can reach out to you and chat there, Simon. But, mate, absolute bloody awesome chat with you again. I wish I could do this more often. I'm just flat out with work and life and everything else. But it's good to catch up with with guys like you that have done some early episodes with us and just sort of re-catch up and just shoot the breeze. It's bloody great. So awesome to have you with me today.
Shrek, mate, it's when I did this one with you, number one, all those years ago, who would have thought you're on the number you're on now? It's just fantastic. And it says so much about how you guys have done so much for the sport. It's fantastic. And I enjoy listening to every episode you guys put out. It's great. So it's a credit to you, mate, what you guys are doing for the sport too. You're great. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We've definitely been sport. We've had some bloody good yarns over the years. I wonder if Turbo's ever coming back, but we'll see. We'll see how he goes. But all good, Simon. All right, man.
Well, mate, I was going to ask if he's still sitting under a tree with his seasickness, but I hope he's getting better.
I think he's been getting out spearing a little bit lately. I haven't caught up with the fella for a little while, but we'll see what happens. So, all good, Simon.
All right. Cheers, man. Thanks, Shrek. Bye.
Guys, hope you enjoyed today's interview with Simon. Some controversial opinions shared. If you have any criticism, I'm more than happy to hear about it. Shrek at noobspearo.com. We've all got opinions about these things, and it's great if people can fill in some of the gaps in information because we don't have all the information. But the opinions I express are my own, and I'll reply to you if you have any complaints, but Shrek at noobspearo.com. Any feedback at all about this episode would be great. The other thing was Patreon. We've got Patreon has got $650 in there. That's going to pay for this Melbourne trip coming up in November. At this stage, I am flying solo down there to catch up with the boys from Club Spearfish and hopefully do an in-store interview at Adreno down there. And I'd love to go spearing with you if you're down in that neck of the woods. I'm going to be catching up with Sven and Eckhart. Look, that's where we're going. That's what we're doing. As usual, your reviews are welcome. Thanks for listening to today's NOOBPEARO podcast. I'm out. Now, I don't know about you, but I love new gear. And spearfishing.com.au have got a huge range. Mad flat shipping rate, especially in Australia. And if you use the code NOOBSPEARO, you not only support us, but you get $20 off every purchase over $200. That's right, pump in the code NOOBSPEARO at checkout, NOOBSPEARO at spearfishing.com.au, and you will save $20 on every purchase over $200. No brainer. Thanks, Adreno.